into the question, what includes those scripts to control compilations to be compliant, right? Once again, my recommendation is think about the intent. The intent is to enable the user to modify and run modified versions. So if you include anything that's necessary to enable the user to run modified versions, nobody can make any kind of complaint against you. Well, then we run into the issue of digital restrictions management with regard to software. I'm not talking about DRM for media or something like that. This is completely not my point. DRM for the actual GPL licensed software itself, where a company wants to prevent users from running modified versions of GPL licensed software on a particular device, which are things like cryptographic verification of bootloaders, cryptographic verification, signature checks of the kernel images, and so on. I personally believe it's problematic from a GPL licensing point of view because you are depriving the user. You're removing the right, or you're removing the ability of the user to run modified versions of the program. Right? Let's say you're shipping an Android device, and the Android device is using some cryptographic verification to make sure only the kernel provided by the vendor is going to run on the device. The Android kernel will not run on the laptop of somebody else. So how do you fulfill the intent of enabling the user to run a modified version of that software if you remove it by technical means? So this is, again, as I said, it's an interesting question, legally difficult. Different people have different opinions on this. GPL version 3 makes it quite clear in the license text. GPL version 2, well, everyone has his own interpretation of what will eventually happen. We might see legal cases in that area, we might not. It's unclear. I would recommend you to not do that. GPL violations themselves are not really new. They happen all the time. Let's just have a quick look at the risks. Well, if you are involved in shipping a product that's incompliant to the GNU GPL, you're committing a copyright infringement. It's not different from shipping a product with unlicensed copies of Microsoft Windows or any other copyrighted software. There's really no difference. You can face civil and criminal charges in court. The civil charges in Germany, for example, where I do most of my enforcement, include the right to cease and desist, which means the copyright holders can hold the further sales, further distribution of the product until it's license compliant. The copyright holders can obtain information, what quantity of the product and to which kind of clients and customers it was been shipping. Damages for lost revenue is definitely something that can be an issue. And then, of course, civil charges can also be filed against every retail store, every importer, every distributor involved in distributing such devices. And the legal pressure against such companies will then turn into economic pressure on the ODM companies and the actual engineering companies that happen to be, in East Asia and a lot of them Taiwan. Okay, that's basically it. This is my last slide. A little bit of an outlook. I think the very clear GPL violations in embedded devices are declining. We see less and less of them, but likely we see them continuing, if not only because every year you see new types of devices that suddenly run Linux or other free software. And while until a certain point you may see all the embedded networking device manufacturers, they have now understood how to deal with Linux. Then a new industry starts to use Linux in their products, and they don't really have the skill or the knowledge yet how to comply with the license. We'll see more derivative work type GPL violations, and I predict that we'll see actual legal enforcement, or at least people who try to do that in the next couple of years. And there's an interesting movement, at least in Europe right now, where, or in America as well, always the content and the media industry is always demanding stronger copyright protection. And that stronger copyright protection then in turn also makes it, makes the possibility of software license enforcement, because it's also copyright easier. In France, we now have a law, a so-called 3 strikes law, where if somebody makes a copyright violation by downloading some copyrighted content off the internet, after 3 times they will cut his internet connection, right? So my question would be, well, can we use this for GPL enforcement, right? Can we cut the internet connection of a company if he infringed 3 times? Interesting new ideas coming up with stronger and stronger copyright protections. Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay.
That was it.
Thanks, Shane. Oh no, sorry. Thanks, Harold. And
the
same. One question open. Yeah, please.
Thank you. I want to ask that. Well, if I create a software I license under GPL, can I authorize others to sue the company that they violate my software license? Because if in normal cases, if I found a GPL violation, I have to tell the copyright holder that his intellectual property has been sold, and he have to sue the company. Yeah. So, is there any way to authorize others to do that instead of only the copyright holder can do that? Thank you.
Well, the copyright holder can, of course, assign certain rights to somebody else, and then that other person or organization can use the rights to do the actual legal enforcement. So it is possible, but you cannot just hire somebody to actually do the enforcement, but you actually have to sign over, or at least have some kind of agreement to temporarily or to transfer rights to that organization or to that person who will then, as a copyright holder, because he has acquired the copyright to some extent, do the enforcement. The Free Software Foundation Europe has a document called the Fiduciary License Agreement, the FLA, and this agreement can be used between a copyright holder and another entity to transfer sufficient rights so that other entity can, for example, take care of license enforcement. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold, again, and please applause again.